There has been a lot of talk recently about history, trans history specifically. Did trans people exist before Caitlyn Jenner came out? Were we invented by Laverne Cox? Did we spawn from logs cut in the last decade? The answer is obviously no. And yet a lot of people think that this is a recent trend. And still, in the year of our Lord, we still have to defend our existence. Usually this takes the form of people having to prove that their gender is what they identify as. But how can you prove such a thing? How do you define that which does not want to be defined? People point to biology, but according to science and science people and science stuff, this isn't as easy as it might seem. Aha! You say, but those who do not conform are merely mutations of the normal. These are mutations. They are not the pure gender. Pure gender. Pure gender only exists among the cis. Well, first of all, your understanding of the word mutations is quite limited if that's what you think. Mutations are also not something that's bad. Without mutations, there would be no evolution. So you could say that trans people are evolving gender. Biology is way more complex than your high school education, and, well, my high school education. I am not a biologist. Hence, gender isn't as easily defined as you might think. But aha, says thee! Perhaps it is the metric by which society judges thee that gender is based. This is usually what people mean when they say gender is a social construct. Society treats people as a gender, and therefore they are that gender. But wait, that doesn't make sense. Where do the trans people fit in and all that? Gender is obviously very individual and is different person to person, and it's far too complex to break down in a single video. It's a fundamental question about the nature of the human condition. Why are humans the way we are?
I'll tell you. I don't know.
But this was supposed to be a history lesson, so sit down. Well, trans people have existed as long as there have been human beings, depending on how you actually define trans. It's important to note that the way we view gender today is very different even if we look back 100 years, and even more if we look back 1,000 years. And as such, people who break the norms or rules regarding those genders have been defined in very different ways. I remember not too long ago when effeminate men were called metrosexuals. Are those people trans? Maybe. In some definition of the word, different definitions of the word trans have applied to different people at different points in time. Different cultures have had and still do have very different views on gender today. Not only that, but also how the body relates to your identity. If you want to discuss the concept of gender, you have to understand that different people use different terms, which means different things for different people. Languages are hard. If you want to discuss the concept of gender, you have to understand that your perspective is one perspective. Like, other people have existed than the people who forced themselves to drink milk. I'm no better. I love cheese. The current view of trans people and gender as a whole comes from the early 19th century, with a new form of science. Religious explanations no longer suffice. Everything needs a scientific explanations. Why are trans? Why is gay? And if you couldn't find a physical cause for any of these things, as they tried to do, it had to be mental. This was a world with a new medium who were trying to figure out basics for the first time. And not content with why, people also sought for a cure. But in this age of pseudo-intellectualism, where people had no idea what they were doing, while ignoring everything that people told them, there was hope. One scientific center of the world was Germany, one of the former imperial superpowers, recently suffering from a bad peace treaty, but not yet a lost cause. This was the time of the Weimar Republic. Now, you might have heard Weimar sometime on Twitter, like a form of intellectual slur about the current times. The Weimar Republic was a time of political chaos, civil unrest, and great social movements, both good and bad. This was a time when scientific explanations had more authority than ever before. In this environment, Magnus Hirschfeld had a different point of view. He argued that because these variations on gender and sexuality weren't harmful, they were simply variations of human expression and different ways of being a person. He was one of the first major Western voices working to legalize homosexuality in the West. He even created a scientific institute to study gender and sexuality. So why weren't there pride parades in 1930s Berlin? Well, I think you can guess why. After the Nazis took power in Germany, the institute was shut down. This is a picture of a Nazi book burning. You have probably seen these pictures before. The books they are burning are from the institute that Hirschfeld founded. They were books discussing gender and sexuality in a whole new way. Hirschfeld himself died in 1935, and one of his heirs killed himself when the Nazis invaded Czechoslovakia. Any spaces that during the Weimar Republic might have been open for LGBT people were now shut down. The Nazis were beaten, yes, but after the war, many of the Nazis' actions against LGBT people were deemed legal. The institute remained shut down. His remaining heirs did not continue his work, and West Germany kept many of the Nazi-era laws that prohibited the freedoms of surviving LGBT Germans. For a good while during the 20th century, many LGBT people saw good people fighting for good causes, and they saw good social change. And all of that was lost. Beaten down, destroyed, and lost to time. Social progress isn't linear. It's hard. It's complicated. And I talk about this because I feel that I have to. But change isn't always positive. Change can work against us. Bermuda has recently become the first country in the world to repeal same-sex marriage, which is a pretty basic right. More countries might follow suit, especially in this world where right-wing extremism is on the rise. Many states in the US try to pass laws that try to restrict the freedoms of LGBT people, immigrants, refugees, women. Many have succeeded. The fight for social justice is hard, and it must be fought in every single media that I can think of. Because if we don't, history has a risk of repeating itself. If you like my content and you want to subscribe to it, there's a big red button that says subscribe, and I would really enjoy if you press that. I would also enjoy if you liked my video. If you liked it, you can also comment. I usually respond to most questions. It depends on the question. I know that my videos have been a bit irregular lately. I'm working on that. There's, life, stuff like that. If you really enjoy my content, you can also support me on Patreon. I want to give a special shout out to Ibrahim Aldridge. Thank you very much for supporting me. It means so much to me, really, to be able to do this. And thank you.